G'day there guys, it's Connie here again from Marky Industries, and we are back with some more stories from Reddit. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to hit like and subscribe, and also the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Alrighty, let's get right into it. Okie dokie, we're on Am I the A-hole? This one was written by user GlitteringMale117, and it's titled, Am I in the wrong for telling my ex-husband that our kids are justified in feeling like they don't have a father? I'm 33 and have two kids, 12 and 8. I divorced their dad when I discovered he was cheating on me with a mum from our youngest son's school group. Despite that betrayal, I agreed to shared custody because I wanted my kids to grow up with a father in their lives. However, since the divorce, he's only been around when he's picking them up for visits. He often goes out with his stepchildren, but rarely includes our kids, claiming those outings are spur of the moment and can't always include them. Eventually, I stopped pushing, but I've always thought it was unfair that he keeps his distance from our children's lives. Recently, I decided to upgrade my older son's computer, and he asked if we would give his old one to his cousin, my brother's son. My brother has been a huge support for my kids. He's always available to take them to their school events when I can't, and often takes them out to the park or for trips when I'm busy. My ex, on the other hand, is rarely available for them. Anytime I ask him to help with an activity, he has an excuse. He's out of town or swamped with work. Ironically though, whenever his stepkids need something, he's there. Once he even argued with the stepkid's father at a school event, insisting he had the right to be there. When my ex found out I gave the computer to my nephew, he got upset. He complained that if I had money to spare on a gift like that, I should have forgiven 2 months of child support he'd missed since his finances were tight with a new baby. He added that if I could give away a computer, I should have gifted it to either his kids or his stepkids, who share just one computer among the three of them. I told him my finances were none of his business and that I owed nothing to his stepchildren. Then his wife jumped into the conversation, accusing me of spoiling my son by giving him a new computer and of being petty for letting my son bring it to their house, claiming it was just to show off in front of his step-siblings. I told her she had no right to speak to me that way or question my decisions. I added that I allow my kids to see their father so they can grow up with him in their lives, not so she can interfere with how I parent. My ex was offended, but I told him this whole situation could have been avoided if his wife hadn't inserted herself where she doesn't belong. After that, things seemed to calm down until last week. I went to pick up the kids and my ex was visibly upset. He explained that he'd tried reading a bedtime story to our youngest. At home, he still likes to be read to before bed, usually by me, his brother, or my brother, and when none of us are around, he listens to audiobooks. Apparently my ex wanted to make an effort to connect, so he offered to read to him, but our son turned him down, saying he didn't need him for that because he could do it himself. My ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 80-year-olds without a dad on his tablet, and it hit him hard. The next day, my ex offered to take our oldest son to basketball practice, but he replied that he'd been going with his dad. He quickly corrected himself and said, "Uncle." That made my ex even angrier, and when I came to pick up the kids, he confronted me about it. I told him that if our kids feel like they don't have a father, he has only himself to blame. He tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was the one pushing him away from his role. I told him it's up to him to show up for his kids, not something I can do for him. I reminded him he was the one who broke our family, and he's chosen to be more involved with his stepkids than with his own children. I told him not to kid himself. The kids are growing up, and they're starting to see the reality of who he is as a father. If he keeps this up, he can't expect much from them in the future. After that exchange, his mum called me. While she's always been polite to me, I felt the need to say that I would have appreciated this same concern from her when she supported her son's affair, knowing her grandchildren were losing their father in the process. She hung up, and we haven't spoken since. My brother advised me that I had every right to express how I feel, but he suggested that maybe this discussion shouldn't have happened in front of the kids. Later, my ex texted me saying that if I weren't so difficult, he'd spend more time with them. I told him his duty as a father doesn't depend on whether I'm easy or not, and he knows I've never prevented him from seeing the kids. The truth is, when he has to choose, he prefers outings with his stepkids over his own children, and that's something only he can change. Yeah, what more needs to be said, really? It sounds like a big uphill struggle with this guy. He's got to get his priorities in order here. Let's go to the comments. You can only do so much, OP, and don't let him off the hook for any child support. The fact that it's stretching his budget is a him problem, not a you problem. And I agree with your brother that the conversation should not have happened in front of the kids, but if I understand correctly, your ex chose the time and place, not giving you much choice in the matter, not the a-hole. Quote, my ex stayed to listen as he searched for a story for 8-year-olds without a dad on his tablet. Phew, your kid is ruthless. Good for him, not the a-hole. So, you need to make sure you only communicate in writing from now on. Can you get one of the apps that records everyone's exchanges and has a third party to monitor? Because you're right, but he will start crying alienation any minute now. You need to have no verbal exchanges, and if you do, like at drop-off, then follow up in writing, at a minimum in a text exchange that you keep and back up regularly. I agree that it's better not to do anything that smells of alienation, but on the other hand, it's good for your kids to feel backed up. It's a tricky place to be. Sending hugs and keep it in writing. And try really hard to keep any tone out of it. If anyone reads it, let it be clear that you're doing everything you're required to do, including allowing access to the kids. Hope he replies to a few comments. On the custody agreement. The agreement was to split the time 50-50 with the new baby. Now he says he doesn't have space for both kids and only picks them up on weekends. When they're at his place, he doesn't take them anywhere. The weekend goes by and he goes out with his stepchildren and his wife. Even when they used to stay with him half the week, it was the same story. The current custody agreement. Well, the current agreement is that he can have them whenever he wants. To make it clearer, if they want to have breakfast with me on Monday and dinner with him, that's valid. Here's the thing. Now that the agreement is like this, he sees them less than when he was supposed to have them half the time. I don't know if this makes it clearer now, and we're not from the United States. One downvoted comment says, I'm also a bit suspicious about how OP somehow knows all these details about his relationship with the stepkids. That seems suspect. OP says at the end of the post that she's been accused of being difficult. Fine, her anger is justified, but if she's fought for primary custody, or if the ex has to go through her to get things like extracurricular schedules, then she's contributed to this situation as well. OP replies, my oldest son is friends with his father, step-siblings, and stepmother on Facebook. That's how he has seen and shown me things. I've also found out about other outings because when my mother-in-law called me, she would mention why the kids didn't go to a certain place with their father. She thought I wasn't giving permission and scolded him for lying about me not wanting them to spend time with their step-siblings. Difficult in the sense that I don't want anything more than two parents who respect each other and take care of their children. No favours, no discussions about things that don't concern the kids. There was no custody battle. Another downvoted comment says, your 8-year-old son, I have an 8-year-old as well, so don't try and lie here, was searching for audiobooks relating to 8-year-olds who don't have a dad, unprompted on his own. You expect us to believe this? Opie says, I wasn't there, that's just how my ex told me about it. I didn't mean it literally, more like when you search for kids' stories and see what pops up. That's how I saw it. Why my son searched for it like that, I have no idea. I asked him why he used that title, and he just said he wanted a story. Yeah, more than likely a little bit of embellishment from the ex, I'd imagine. Okay, let's go to an update, 12 days later. These past days have been a bit unusual. First, I want to thank all of you. I didn't expect to receive so much advice, and I never thought this app would be so useful. It's not very popular in my country. Now back to the topic. My ex sent me messages saying he wanted to resolve things, stop arguing, and talk to me. I agreed. He came to my house, and we didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. He asked me if I really thought he was a bad father. I replied that, looking back now, I never would have chosen him to be the father of my children. He said it wasn't easy for him, and I answered that it wasn't easy for me either because I take on both his role and mine. He told me he couldn't leave his stepchildren without a father because he had already broken their family, and I replied that he'd left his own children without a father. He started crying and told me it was my fault, saying that when the infidelity happened, I refused to forgive him or go to couples therapy. I kept telling him things, I'll admit they weren't kind, but none of them were lies. He asked me if, given his current state, I didn't feel sorry for him, and I said no. He told me he didn't think I could be so cruel, and I replied that when I changed jobs, pulled my kids out of school 2 months before the end of term, moved houses, and watched him disappoint our kids over and over again, any empathy I might have felt turned into apathy. He left after that. His mother called me and said she knew what I had told her son, that he hadn't stopped crying, and that she didn't understand how I could carry so much hatred to hurt her son like that. She said I should just get over it. I answered, with all due respect, what I said wasn't out of hatred but out of truth. If your son is crying, it's because he's finally facing the consequences of his actions. Maybe instead of worrying about how he feels now, you should have taught him to take responsibility and treat people with respect. She said I didn't know what it was like to feel a mother's love and see a child suffer, and I replied that I did understand because I have 2 children who cry over a living father. 2 children who see their dad being a father to other kids when he doesn't have time to be their father. She said he was sorry, and I told her to not put words in his mouth and to stop calling me about anything related to her son. I hung up. I wanted to cry so badly, but I'm a damned mother and I don't have time for that. I want my kids to feel safe, loved, and strong enough not to need anyone, not even me, to be themselves. Last Thursday, I took my kids to their cousin's birthday party, hosted by my ex-sister-in-law. I still have a good relationship with her. She was the one who told me about the infidelity, and that her mother was already encouraging it. My ex showed up alone and irritated. My kids kept their distance from him. They kissed his hand but then ignored him completely. My ex-mother-in-law told the kids they should show more respect to their father, and my eldest replied that he doesn't show respect for me since he and his partner talk badly about me. I scolded my son, not for what he said, but for how he addressed his grandmother. I told him it was wrong to eavesdrop on private conversations and repeat them. Then I asked him to gather his things because we were leaving. My ex-mother-in-law asked me not to leave, saying the kids were having fun and we could resolve this as adults. She asked my ex what he had said, and he claimed not to remember. I told her I didn't care, and she said we should be good parents. I replied that to be good parents, you need to be good people first. My ex was getting agitated. My ex-mother-in-law asked why we couldn't have a civilized co-parenting relationship. I told her everything I've mentioned here about his free will to see the kids, and how the second custody agreement isn't working since he only sees them some weekends. My ex didn't want to discuss it, saying he had too many kids at home. My ex-mother-in-law told him the only kids who should feel comfortable are his, and the comfort of the others should be provided by their biological father. My ex wanted to end the conversation because his mother was scolding him for being a careless father. He also said it was my fault. I asked him to clarify how it was my fault. You can see the kids whenever you want. What more do you want? He started yelling, claiming I was only being petty because I didn't really need the money since I earned more than him and had fewer kids to feed. I told him I wouldn't continue the conversation and that I'd show him what being uncivilized looks like by filing for the overdue child support payments. His mother asked what I meant by overdue payments. I explained that he was 3 months behind. She was furious, slapped him, and demanded to know what he had done with the money for his children. He answered, I couldn't let Junior miss out on attending the same school as my son. I didn't want him to feel inferior. My ex-mother-in-law said she couldn't believe it, and they started arguing. I left. Yet, for context, my youngest son attends a private school, and my ex pays for his stepson to attend the same school. Yesterday, my ex-mother-in-law came over and said she would pay the overdue fees. She brought the money in cash. I knew my ex would be furious. Here's some context. My ex-mother-in-law doesn't work, doesn't own anything herself, and lives with my ex-sister-in-law. However, she does have significant savings from her inheritance. If she pays the tuition, my ex knows there won't be much left for him when she passes, even though she's still healthy. He's been asking her for years to invest some of that money in his business ideas, but she's always refused. My ex's retaliation was not picking up the kids this weekend. Yesterday, my ex-sister-in-law called me. She doesn't know all the details yet, but apparently my ex's 15-year-old stepson punched him in the mouth. She said she'll let me know exactly what happened once she finds out. And before anyone asks, the new custody agreement will likely take a year to finalise. The court says the overdue payments are the priority and the rest can wait. Quote, we have more urgent cases. Opie comments further on the mother-in-law. She knew about the affair. When I say she wasn't rude to me, it's because she never showed displeasure towards me or was a bad mother-in-law. I was surprised that she was a cover for her son. During the divorce, she didn't take sides and has always been a good grandmother. One comment asks, is kissing hands a thing in certain cultures? Never heard of that. Opie says, it's not about literally kissing hands. In my culture, when you see your parents, grandparents, uncles, and godparents, you ask for their blessing. It's like saying Sion, short for the word bendición or blessing. It sounds like Sion as in Sion Father or the Blessing Father. On school. When I found out, I was furious. My son goes to that school because the cheating scandal rumors were spreading at his old school, and I wanted to keep him away from it. An update the next day. A promise is a promise. As I mentioned earlier, my ex's stepson had an altercation with him because my ex refused to let him go out. Now I have more details. My ex's stepson had plans to go bowling with some friends. His biological father had already given him permission and money for the outing. However, when he told his mother, she said he couldn't go because they needed him to stay home and watch his younger siblings. My ex and his wife had planned an outing and needed someone to stay with the kids. This led to an argument. The boy raised his voice to his mother, and my ex stepped in to demand that he respect her. The boy replied that he wasn't his father. Trying to maintain authority, my ex told him that as long as he lived under his roof, he had to follow his rules. The boy ignored him and turned away. My ex followed him and touched his shoulder to get his attention. At that moment, the boy turned around, punched him, and shouted that he wasn't his father and could never compare to him. The mother scolded him for his behavior, but the boy, still angry, shouted back that he hated her. This version was shared by my ex and his wife to my ex-mother-in-law. My sister-in-law later relayed it to me. They went to see my ex-mother-in-law to try to gain her sympathy and convince her to take care of the kids, the 2 stepchildren and the baby, so they could go out. However, my ex-mother-in-law told them she would not take care of the children. When I spoke to my ex, he mentioned he was dealing with family issues and claimed that the boy's biological father was turning him against him. He didn't give me many details and omitted most of what my sister-in-law had shared. He simply informed me that, due to the situation, he wouldn't be able to pick up our children this weekend. The 15-year-old boy is now staying with his biological father. As for what I mentioned earlier, my ex was 2 months behind on child support, and that same week he was supposed to make another payment. He didn't, leaving him 3 months behind. In the end, his mother was the one who covered the overdue amount. Regarding the child who attends the same school as my son, it's not the 15-year-old involved in the altercation, it's his younger stepbrother who is 8 years old, the same age as my son. I decided to enroll my son in that school when the affair became public. At the time, I was working as a kindergarten teacher at the same school, and the boy had been one of my students. We all knew each other, and to protect my children from rumours, I transferred them to a private school. This happened 2 months before the school year ended. Thanks to the circumstances and the support of some kind people, we managed to get them admitted. One comment says, the thing I don't understand is that the ex complains that you have more money, but now you're a kindergarten teacher, rewarding but not well paying, certainly not well paying enough to put a kid in private school. Opie says, when the infidelity occurred, I was an elementary school teacher and was pursuing a master's degree. Now I'm a secondary school teacher and work in a government institution. My salary is now 4 times higher than it was before the divorce. I worked at a public school because I wanted to be close to my children in case something happened. As I mentioned before, my son is still in a private school, but his father pays the tuition so that his stepson can attend there. Another comment says, I wonder if he knows that his mother gave you money for his children. He's lucky that you're not an a-hole because legally he's still behind in child support, especially if she didn't pay it the way the court ordered. I don't believe that courts ever suggest cash payments. Opie says he knows that. That's why he didn't pick up the kids last week. Even my ex-sister-in-law doubts that things happened this way. At first, her wife was crying when her mother said she wouldn't take care of the kids, but the crying stopped. And then the justification started. I know the guy, and I never saw him in violent behaviour. Okay, another 4 days, another update. First of all, I don't know much about how subreddits work, but someone told me that my profile was shared on one, and I have some words for those involved. The discussion was about how I could afford private school tuition on a kindergarten teacher's salary. To clarify, I'm no longer a kindergarten teacher, I am a high school teacher, and salaries in education vary significantly depending on the country. In my country, salaries in education are quite competitive compared to other jobs. To clear up any further assumptions, micro businesses are US $280, small businesses $315, medium-sized businesses $350, and large businesses $370. My field, education. Early education or kindergarten is $800 to $1,000. Primary education is $900 to $1,100. Secondary education is $1,100 to $1,300, and secondary education with 5 years of experience is $1,300 to $1,400 US. Associate professor or a master's degree is $1,050 to $1,400, and full professor or doctorate is $1,400 to $1,750 US. The cost of living here is affordable, and I mentioned that in several comments. I'm not from the United States, where life is more expensive. In my country, this salary is more than enough to live comfortably. I'm not rich, but my kids enjoy an excellent quality of life. Private school tuition varies. There are schools as low as $120 per month or less, and of course there are elite schools that are much more expensive. We use local currency, not dollars. I also have other sources of income that are irrelevant here. Now, to stop the speculation, people assumed I was from multiple countries, calculated my monthly tuition costs, and even tallied up my expenses. The only thing you missed was calculating the cost of my divorce. Let me save you some trouble. I didn't pay a single cent, and my ex left with nothing but the clothes on his back. Careful not to choke on that. As for my kids not being well cared for, my kids are perfectly fine, and as long as I'm breathing, no one will take that away from them. I saw a lot of concern for my children, but here's a question for you. What about your kids? Are they okay? Did you pay what you owed for their care? When was the last time you saw them? There's no need to worry about my kids. If any of those users want more details, feel free to contact me, and I'll happily send over some bills for you to pay since you're so interested in my finances and expenses. And regarding my divorce, it was far from amicable, not because of custody, that was never an issue, but because my ex lied at every turn to delay and obstruct the process. I didn't accept it then, I don't accept it now, and I never will, not in a million years. For those still questioning my divorce, here are my words to you. Once there's infidelity, there's no family left. This clarification isn't for those who offered helpful comments or advice on my post. End of the informational break. Now the actual update. The day after my post here, my ex was arrested for domestic violence and child abuse. The father of the boy involved filed a complaint. My ex's wife defended him, claiming that her son was a brat and that this wasn't the first time her son had been violent with him or his younger siblings. This left me surprised because, as far as I know, my ex had never mentioned that the teenager had been beaten. My ex-sister-in-law said that her brother, meaning my ex, never brought it up. I asked my kids if their stepbrother had ever touched them or been violent with them. Both said no. My children are comfortable telling me anything, and their answer was no. My ex and his wife have since changed their story about the incident. Now their version is that the boy misbehaved, my ex tried to talk to him, and the boy hit him first, so the mother hit her son to pull him off my ex. Child protection authorities here are usually very strict when a case interests them, or when the harm suffered by the child is severe. I haven't seen the teenager myself. The teenager has been placed in a shelter for abused youth. Edit: when physical abuse of minors is reported, they are transferred to a safe space until a Gazelle chamber interview and a forensic medical evaluation are conducted. Once a safe environment is confirmed, they are returned to the parent. Holy moly, talk about a turn for the worst. I'm a little bit confused though, I'm not sure what to believe. It's all very convoluted right now. Opie updates 2 weeks later. Hi, I thought long and hard before posting this update because I feel like my initial post and this one don't serve the purpose, as they don't directly involve my children. Here's what happened. It was determined that the 15-year-old boy was indeed assaulted. I don't have all the details about what was said during his interview since, being a minor, that information is protected. From what I understand, my ex-mother-in-law hired a lawyer, and with the mother's statement, my ex was cleared of the violence charges. However, the boy insists on a different version of what happened. In the middle of all of this, my ex had an altercation with a police officer when they were separating him from the boy's father, which led to his arrest for a week. In the end, there were no charges for violence or child abuse. On the other hand, the boy's mother is still on maternity leave, and from what I've heard, she was referred to parenting and anger management courses. The boy's father can't take care of him full time, and the boy said he would go back to his mother if my ex left the house. Apparently that didn't happen, so the boy is currently staying with his paternal grandmother. That's all I know for now. My eldest son knows what happened, but it wasn't through me. I want to clarify that because people tend to assume a lot here. I don't think I'll update again unless this directly involves my kids, and honestly, I hope it doesn't come to that. For now, my kids' visits to my ex are suspended. While I respect the court's decision, I still have my doubts about how the situation was handled, and I'm shocked at how justice worked in this case. I don't want to speculate, but there are rumours that my ex-mother-in-law paid a lot of money. I can't confirm that though. Wishing you all happy holidays. Holy moly, sounds like there was a little bit of under-the-table stuff to get the ex's charges dropped. I'm with OP though, I really hope this doesn't continue to escalate and involve the kids again. Let's read some final comments. I wonder how the exes, my kids think I'm a bad father, time to exercise my authority on the kid who doesn't consider me a father and prove them wrong. Route didn't work out. I feel almost bad to hope that the ex lost both of the kids in the process. Seeing the way he's acting, he actually might. For a guy who's concerned about his supposed inheritance, he sure is doing a good job of making sure there's less of it. All of this could have been avoided if the ex wasn't such a home-wrecking, self-centered POS arsewipe to two sets of kids, OPs, and the affair partners. This ex is his own special kind of douchebag, from scapegoating the OP for his own decisions and screw-ups to lying to his mum and family to getting into physical fights. This guy has more red flags than a red flag factory. I hope OP is now far more strict with visitation, and now the court is involved, and gets all back child support, if she is not already, and gets every penny her kids deserve going forward. Yeah, 100%. Hard to argue with that. Anyway guys, we're going to leave that story there. I'll keep an eye out for any future updates. Alright, let me know your thoughts and we'll move on. Okay, we're back over on relationships. This one was written by a throwaway account and it's titled, "My boyfriend won't ask for my hand and my dad is staging a family boycott at my wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish?" I've been with my boyfriend, 25, for 3 years. We both just finished school and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I could not be happier. I love him and he is going to be an awesome dad someday. But my boyfriend is very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend did not ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said he'll pay for at a restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive and possessive with his mum as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he's met my whole family and gotten to know them. He says they've always known his intentions, and he never made it secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels he was done enough to announce his intentions, and all of them seemed to approve of him. He says that at this point he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday my mum told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mum says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my two older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mother that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I have decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother was obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what, and she would not say, but from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My two sisters and my mum have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. Edit, I'm getting some comments about my boyfriend asking for my parents' blessing instead of permission or hand. I just can't see the difference. There might be one, but I don't see it. Is there a big difference? Me, I don't really personally know the difference there, but maybe someone in the comments can let me know. But yeah, there's so many traditions and things around marriage and weddings that you don't know what to actually include and what not to. But personally, this seems like a weird one to kind of get stuck up about and be willing to boycott an entire wedding over. I can kind of see where the boyfriend's coming from in this case. It's more or less an arbitrary thing. Let's go to the comments. Fine, go ahead and agree to your parents' Stone Age demand, but make sure they pay your fiancé your full worth in cattle and or loot. No dowry, no request for hand in marriage. If they want the old traditions, they can have all of them. It's one thing for a father to be a bit disappointed he wasn't asked for his daughter's hand. It's a grossly outdated tradition, but some people like the old ways, like giving the bride away. But your parents threatening to boycott your wedding and other consequences is incredibly extreme and unreasonable. If my parents threatened to boycott the happiest day of my life on the basis of something so petty, I'd say, see ya. Your parents aren't upset that you and your partner aren't honouring old traditions. They're upset that you're not kissing ass. Your father obviously still intends to be the most important person in your life, and he is angry his control is threatened. Seriously, don't negotiate with terrorists. You're your own woman now, and you're beginning a new life and a new family. Being a part of your family is a privilege, not a right, and if your parents are holding their love and support ransom unless you toe the line, then I'd say you're better off without them. Unless you want to ask their permission every day on how to raise your children and how to run a household, tell them now that they have no say in how you live your life. If you and your boyfriend share the same belief that women are not property, then you need to put your foot down with your whole family. Tell them all this is what you are doing. You are marrying this guy, and you are hoping they all come to the wedding, but you will understand if they don't. If you are arguing in favour of empowering women and no longer being viewed as a property, then stand up for yourself and tell everyone how it's going to be. And then do not engage in any more discussion about it. This is your family, and you need to be the one to draw the clear, bright line. You aren't just supporting your fiancé in this argument, you are the one creating the boundary. Good luck. Opie responds to some comments. Thanks for the congrats and comments. I was just thinking as I read some comments here. One comment said that my parents should not have staged the boycott either way, so maybe the boycott signals something more than just my father wanting to be included in some way. I don't know, I'm now worried that the boycott is calling all my relatives signals more controlling issues than my dad has that I never noticed before. My two older sisters had no problems with their wedding because they did everything the way my dad liked, so I'm scared now that maybe my boyfriend is right that it's not just a tradition. One comment says, quote, "My dad feels like he is being very accommodating." No, both he and your mother are being controlling, and they're attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé, otherwise you're setting precedent for this type of behaviour and interference for the rest of your marriage. Opie replies, "This is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does, so I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptised and all that." You two need to have a discussion about how the children will be raised religion-wise now, before you have the child. Just advice from someone who learned the hard way. Opie says, "We did. We don't want religion in our children's lives. We decided that education is going to be the focus, and they will make their own minds up about religion once they are educated adults. I grew up Catholic, but I don't want that for my kids. My husband grew up somewhat Christian, and he still believes in God, but he doesn't want religion to be a part of our family either. We have talked this subject to death. You're right, it's very important. I realise we might change our minds later, who knows. But my family doesn't know about this. I have a feeling after this boycott that my parents will stage another one when they find out that we won't be Catholic." Yeah, dangerous waters. Opie updates 2 years later. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my two sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my two brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle, and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my sister-in-law actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride, or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There's been no contact between me and my family other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore, I just toss them. I don't know why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away, so it's not like I'll run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true, that they would come crawling back when we had children. I'm now expecting our first child, a girl. She'll be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands. Not requests, demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said he'd already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet-talk me to raising his voice at me, and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper and again begged me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told I declined every time. He lets my mum do the dirty work so he can later hide behind her and deny he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody, but be the good cop also. He'll never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him our daughter would not be baptized or Catholic at all. No offense to Catholics. I told him he was too manipulative and controlling, and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, the day and for several days after that phone call, I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister, and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me, but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family, there's no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they're all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now, my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions even if it means I'm bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all his sheep back into our lives. One downvoted comment says, "He should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace. Geez, I mean really pushing your family away for such a stupid reason, on their side and yours." Opie says, "But that's the thing. After that one small task, they would want to name my daughter. Another small task, then they would ask I go have a baby near them. Another small task, then they have her baptized by their priest. Then they pick her school. Then they make life decisions for her like they tried with me and my siblings. All small tasks." Opie replies to another downvoted comment that said that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comment. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling and abusive people, or people who condone such behaviour. After years of abuse, I was glad my husband decided my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise, I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting my dad at every turn. Quote, "I chose to burn bridges that needed to go." Damn straight, I want to high-five her. I hope their little family is living their best lives without that toxic, controlling drama llama mess. Quote, my dad is kind of old school. Cutting off your daughter, boycotting her wedding and forcing all of your family to also boycott or get the same treatment, all because her boyfriend didn't jump through one ancient hoop, is a little more than kind of old school. He's Neolithic. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. He's basically a fossil at this point. Anyway guys, we're going to leave that story there. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Maybe you got a similar story you'd like to share. Either way, that's it from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.